And one final deep breath. And let it go. There's something very sacred, as Amy sang, so sacred, so precious. Something very sacred about breathing together. For one thing, it beats the alternative, but really, not funny. But there is something about inspiring together. Inspire and expire. That's what we are doing together. The root word being spire, spirits, breathing in spirit, breathing out spirit. So it's been an interesting winter, okay? I've been here 5 years, and this is the most snow I have ever seen, ever in my life. And from what you all are telling me, it's pretty much the most snow you've seen in a really long time, right? It's like the Energizer Bunny, it just keeps going and going and going. I found this cartoon. Can I get a show of hands? And you know, it's ironic, especially to me, because one of the reasons that I moved here from Southern California was because Southern California doesn't have weather. We have climate. You know, you'd always talk about the climate in California, but there's no weather to speak of. So, and I like weather. I'm kind of a weather geek. If you know me, I'm like always looking at the weather app to see what's going on. Well, be careful what you wish for. Because the first year that I was here, we had the 100-year flood. We had Snowtember, where it snowed in September and half the trees in Calgary got injured. And at the time, particularly Pat Christie, Pat, are you here? Okay, I think she's traveling. But at the time, people kept saying to me, it's not usually like this. It's not usually like this. Well, here it is 5 years later, and people are still saying to me, it's not usually like this. So one of the things that has taken me by surprise, now understand I'm not from here, is the condition of the roads in the neighborhoods. The main roads, the well-traveled roads are pretty good, right? I think the city of Calgary and the province has done a pretty good job, right? But that doesn't seem to be the case in the neighborhood streets, which are downright treacherous. Am I right? Oh my gosh. And during the very worst part of the snow period, I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, the ruts, the street ruts on my street coming to my house made it almost impossible to drive on. And I have good winter tires. It's one thing Dr. Carroll told me when I got here. She said the best investment you can make is good winter tires. So I had believed that. So I have good winter tires. I have all-wheel drive, and they're still almost impossible to drive on. So to make matters worse, now you understand, because I'm not here, I don't know what the proper protocol is for driving on snow-rutted roads. I thought that because the roads were there, the ruts were there, that's where I'm supposed to drive. I'm supposed to drive in the rut, right? Well, so every time I get on my road, I get there and I gear my car into the ruts and I slide and I slip and I'm going like 10 kilometers an hour and it's still treacherous and scary. But it's where I'm supposed to drive, right? So I'm driving with a friend who says to me, why don't you get out of the rut and drive along the side of the rut where the snow is? It's not going to hurt your undercarriage and you're going to get better traction, right? And I was, I didn't know I was allowed to do that. I thought I had to stay in the rut because obviously that's where everybody else is. Yes? Which brings me to my topic. Stuck in a rut? Anybody here? Stuck in a rut? Either literally or figuratively? Maybe that rut is an aspect of your life that's no longer serving you, but you stay in it because you really don't know that there's an alternative, like you can actually get out of the rut and drive along the side of the rut. You don't know that. Or maybe you don't know that it's perfectly acceptable to find a new way of doing things. Or maybe the rut is comfortable and it's familiar, and you don't want to work that hard to make a change. Or maybe you know you're in the rut, but you just simply don't have the tools that you need to get yourself out of the rut. Or maybe, just like I was with the snow and ice rut, maybe you think it's where you're supposed to be. Please understand, whenever I have a topic like this, I know that there are some people who live really beautiful, comfortable lives. And if your life and your rut and your routines are working for you, then good on you. Yay, I'm happy for you. The challenge is what I have found in my own life, and I can only speak for my own life and kind of observing how life works. The universe doesn't usually work like that, as a rule. I know for myself, when I find myself too complacent, when I am too comfortable, something inevitably happens to shake me out of that complacency. Yes? You know what I'm talking about? And there's a reason for that. There's a spiritual reason for that, and that is that the universe, you understand when I'm talking about the universe, I'm talking about the all and everything, that life force energy that is back of all things. That thing is always wanting to express itself and grow, even if it means shaking us out of our comfort zone. So I love this quote by Ernest Holmes. He said, "Nature will not let us stay in any one place too long. She will let us stay long enough to gather the experience necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is a wise provision, for should we stay here too long, we would become too set, too rigid, too inflexible. Nature demands the change in order that we may advance." Nature demands the change in order that we may advance. And what that means is life, nature, whatever you want to call it, is going to shift. It is going to change because that is its nature. Think of the 4 seasons. What if we were stuck in winter? Wait, kind of we are. But what if we were stuck in winter? What were we stuck in summer, which is my personal nightmare, right? Nature shifts and changes because that is its nature. And one of the ways that life or nature expresses itself is through us and as us. We are one of the ways that life knows itself on this plane of existence. So because life's nature is to grow and to change and express, it means that it is our nature to grow and change and express. So we can either do it consciously. By consciously, I mean on purpose. We can participate in the process. We can try new things. We can risk. We can branch out of our comfort zones. Or we can try to keep things just the way they are. Yeah. And run the risk of unexpected changes happening that catch us by surprise. Yes? Because, like I said, Dr. Holmes, nature demands the change in order that we advance. So I'm going to give you a personal example. There's a reason for it. Many of you have heard portions of my story, parts of my story, so I'm going to fast forward through the early parts. I got sober 32 years ago last month. Thank you. After I got sober and kind of got my feet under me, then I found this teaching and I began studying first to be a practitioner and then to be a minister. To be a minister is a minimum of 7 years of study. I was young then. 7 years didn't daunt me one little bit. So I got sober, I started studying. I graduated from ministerial training in 1997, And I got my first pulpit in 1998, a little tiny little center in Temecula, California that had 12 people in the congregation and $35 in the checking account. True story. It provided me with many growth opportunities, both consciously and not so consciously. Ministry is a trick, let me just tell you that. And yet, in spite of, or maybe because of all of those growth opportunities, I eventually grew that center from 12 to a couple of hundred. And it was good. Life was good. Wow, yes. And then in 2012, 15 years into my ministry, I recognized that I was in a little bit of a rut. Good life. I loved what I did. I loved the people that I was doing it with, everything. It was a beautiful life. I had a nice house, I had family, I had friends, I had service work and conferences and events. I was happy, I was healthy. I was in the hotbed of metaphysics and new thought there in Southern California where you can't throw a stone without hitting another religious science minister. I was doing great, right? But I wasn't growing. And I hadn't grown for a while. Wasn't a bottomless pit, wasn't a rut that was just so deep. I mean, I could keep on doing what I was doing because I was still loving it, but I knew that there was something more for me to do. So when Dr. Carroll contacted me, the former minister here, she contacted me right around now, 2012, started talking about maybe did I want to come to Calgary, and I was like, for all the reasons I mentioned, right? You know, house, family, colleagues, native Californian, blah, 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 blah. But even as I was saying no, there was something to me that was going, I wonder. So long story short, following the irresistible and yet not so gentle urge of spirit, on April 1st, 2013, April Fool's Day, I kid you not, I packed up my car, my 2 senior cats, my sister, my coffee maker, stuff that I knew that I would need until my main stuff came, and I headed up to move to Canada, to move to Calgary. And I took the stage 5 years ago today. Now, I wish I could tell you that it was smooth sailing all the way. Anybody who was here back then knows that it wasn't. It absolutely was not. Not only did I have to get used to living in a new city and a new climate and a new country, because things are a little bit different, not like horribly different, but banking is different. I'm telling you right now, banking is different. But I also had to get used to being at a new center that had been around a really long time and had a super long history. So instead of coming in as the queen bee, like I was in my old center, I actually had to earn my queen bee status. Yeah. I wasn't the founding minister. I was the new kid in town. And because I was the new kid in town, instead of being like, no, my way or the highway, I had to learn how to be flexible and open and humble, but at the same time, also be solid and clear, a leader, and confident. Do you hear the dichotomy there? Humble yet confident. Open yet clear. The good news was, and continues to be, is that rut that I was in, non-existent. Everything, absolutely everything, except my reliance on this teaching and on God and what I understood God to be. Everything was up for renewal. Everything was up for restructuring. And it was hard. It was really hard. More than once, I thought to myself, what was I thinking? What was I doing? What am I doing? I want to go home to my comfortable life where I know the rules. But that's the thing about life, is that rules change. And if we're smart, we change with them. Yeah? So here I am, I'm 5 years later, and experienced personal growth like you cannot even imagine. I'm not the same person I was when I got here. I'm stronger, absolutely. I am more confident, because I did this, and I did this. I'm more compassionate. But here's the key, I'm more compassionate to others, and I'm also more compassionate to myself. I also have less tolerance for BS. And you can make that mean whatever you want. But the other thing is I have a much, see, usually we say BS stands for belief systems. So I have less tolerance for nonsense, let's just put it that way. And this broader worldview that I don't think I would have had if I'd stayed in my comfortable life in Southern California. Now, does that mean that everybody, in order to experience change in your life, or if you're having a little bit of inertia, or you're having a little bit of complacency, that you need to move to a foreign country, or you need to leave your relationship, or you need to quit your job? The answer is no, absolutely not. I just figure that since I've committed to living my life kind of out loud, I've been on this accelerated course of growth. So it doesn't mean that you have to go through these extremes. But it does mean that you have the opportunity to see where you might be in a rut, and then do what you know how to do, or learn how to transcend, to rise above the rut, so that you can continue to express life in a fresh and, the word that's coming to me is green in a way, like spring's coming and things are going to be green. So learn how to rise above that rut so that you can express life more freshly, more fully, more greenly. And the best way that I know of to get out of that rut is to change the consciousness that is allowing the rut. You understand what I'm saying here? Consciousness means awareness, it means awakeness, whatever. So we need to change the consciousness that is allowing us to be in that rut. So if you have a consciousness of this is good enough, or why should I try, it's not going to make a difference, or I'll do it tomorrow, or I don't want to work that hard, or that kind of habitual thinking creates a mental rut, and when you have a mental rut, it inevitably becomes a physical, material rut instead. It's about habitual thinking. It's one of the reasons we keep coming here, to remind us to think differently, to remind us of who we are and what our truth is. We are individualizations of that which wants to express in greater and fuller ways. It's why we are here. I love this quote from Ernest Holmes. You exist, that this power may have a unique outlet for its expression. The more life you express, the more it flows through you. Therefore, every legitimate desire you have is the pushing of this power through you into its own self-expression. In this way, you are in partnership with the infinite. Take a deep breath. Put your hand on your heart and say, I am in partnership with the infinite. I am in partnership with the infinite. So this morning, I paid attention, actually it was last evening that I paid attention to an urge from the divine in the voice of Reverend Marjorie. who called me about 7:30, and we had a conversation, and I'm cutting my talk just a little bit short. Because here in Canada, we experienced a loss. And because it hit so many people so close to home, I'm going to have Reverend Marjorie come and take a few minutes to honor these young men and their coach. And then after that, Amy is going to sing a song specially chosen. Do you want to come here? Please welcome Reverend Marjorie.
Thank you, Dr. Pat. I spent a good part of yesterday afternoon on social media and watching the television and in tears, grieving for this sad event. Thinking about the boys who passed, the ones who are still here, thinking about their families, their friends, their teammates, their community, and identifying with it. I was, as a teenager, on buses around Alberta as a member of a sporting team. If you lived in rural Canada in your life, you will be familiar with this. We get on the bus and we drive around because the communities are separated from one another. So it just really touched me. I've had brothers and nephews who've had this experience, and that was a part of it. But I also noticed, as I allowed the grieving to happen, and I came through the grieving and started to move more into thinking, and I really noticed the outpouring of affection, of compassion, of grief across the country, in the US, around the world really. And I really was reminded that we have the capacity to love. And the reason that this outpouring is coming from everywhere is because we are spiritual human beings, imbued with all of the beauty of emotion. So we feel love in the local level, the local sense of our family and friends, but we also feel it in that big universal heart that we all share. We are one. We recognize in one another the love of spirit, this love that is our very nature. And so I was steeped in this idea of this universal love. And then I also realized that there's an opportunity in our teaching, and I moved into treatment, and I recognized that we, at the same time, as we feel the love and the grief and the compassion, at the same time, we have the opportunity to remember that we are eternal. We call this passing of life from the physical plane to another plane, we call this transition for a reason. These young men and mature men that have passed are spirit itself. The people who remain are spirit itself. That within us we always have the capacity for love, for peace, for ultimately, again, joy. We have the strength of spirit within us, that every one of us, all of the people, the families, the friends, all of us have this spiritual strength within us. So let's know together. Amy's going to come up and sing a song to allow us to just be present in this moment. But let's just take a moment to remember that we are one family, that we are one spirit, that spirit is at work here, that there is love and peace and power and compassion underneath and flowing through all of what has been occurring. So let's honor that together in this beautiful community that we've created together. Let's see.